What, after all, are these churches now, if they are not the tombs and sepulchres of God? Friedrich Nietzsche was a German philosopher who is said to have hated Christianity and morality. Nietzsche criticized a philosophical take on all issues and popularly opined that God is dead and there are no facts, only interpretations. A musician, poet, philosopher, and philologist, and a madman, Nietzsche changed the outlook to Western philosophy forever. Perhaps the beginning of his madness can be traced to an incident in the Italian city of Turin, where Nietzsche became associated with a horse. He had, in fact, the most peculiar relationships with animals, in particular with this horse in Turin. On the 3rd of January 1889, in an outburst, Nietzsche left the home of his hosts in Turin, where he was staying for some time. And almost immediately he witnessed a scene which irreversibly touched his soul. A horse being mercilessly whipped by the driver of a chariot. Seeing this, Nietzsche threw himself onto the neck of the animal to defend him from the blows. And legend has it that Nietzsche burst into tears. That same day, he was almost arrested for rioting and was saved by his friend and landlord David Fino, who took him home. After reaching home, Nietzsche lay on a couch for 2 days without speaking a single word, and then uttered his obligatory last words, Mutter, ich bin dumm. Mother, I am dumb. At least this is one version of the events used as a premise in the 2011 film The Turin Horse, made by the Hungarian filmmaker and artisan Béla Tarr. The truthfulness of the incident is doubtful and a subject of much speculation over the years. After this incident, Nietzsche's family came to Turin and brought him back to Basel, where he was hospitalized and diagnosed with syphilis, a disease that would be generally blamed for his mental decay. This episode, hovering somewhere between legend and reality, marks the beginning of the madness, which was to last 11 years until the very day of Nietzsche's death. In his madness, Nietzsche wrote seemingly psychotic letters to a number of friends and various figures of European royalty. These letters are popularly known as the Madness Letters, and Nietzsche alternatively signed them as Dionysus or the Crucified. These letters focus on a hedonistic understanding of humanity and call for the death of the Pope, Wilhelm, Bismarck, Stoker, and all the anti-Semites. Unable to take care of himself, his mother did so for a long time. Nietzsche died in 1900 after having lived a full 10 years in a near catatonic state. His sister, Elizabeth Foster Nietzsche, took up the task of completing his unpublished books and ideas during this period. It is speculated that much of his works during this time were altered and conceptualized through her views. She became a strong advocate of Adolf Hitler and his views, who attended her funeral in 1935. It was she who is largely considered responsible for her brother's false image as the godfather of fascism. Nietzsche's sexuality has often been the topic of contention discussed by historians, primarily because Nietzsche was diagnosed with syphilis despite being distinctly uncomfortable with sex. Nietzsche himself once told his friend Paul Dusson a story about the time he was taken to a brothel by mistake and wound up playing the piano all night, as it was, I quote, the only soulful thing present, unquote. Nietzsche made 3 attempts at proposing to Salome, but was sadly rejected. Salome looked upon the idea of marriage as a violation and considered Nietzsche simply as a friend. Philosopher and critic Georges Bataille puts forth a different theory that Nietzsche's breakdown and his mental illness was due to a full acceptance of his philosophical doctrine. In other words, Nietzsche was ridden with the fact that unless he lives out his own propagated principles of ideology and philosophy, he won't be able to justify them. Thus, his attempts to live what he wrote created an unknown pressure on him, thus making him mad. As Bataille sees it, Nietzsche was forced to choose between portraying the figure his philosophy forced him to become or living a lie. There was quite a bit of literature found that claims that Nietzsche was a gay simply because he was disinterested in sex. Freud, who almost obsessed over Nietzsche, once wrote that Nietzsche's sexual leanings were an enigma. In fact, Nietzsche himself almost remained an enigma throughout. A heavy user of opium, he suffered 2 strokes in 1898 and 1899, which partially paralyzed him, leaving him unable to walk or speak. He contracted pneumonia in 1900, and finally, on 25th of August 1900, he drew his last breath.